It's time for a new adventure. I'm going on my new run to collect every single Star Wars vehicle made from 1978 to 1985. Collect them all and have mercy on my soul. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I go over vintage toy history and I go on epic collecting runs. So subscribe to the channel to see more videos like that week after week. And if you follow my channel, you know that I've been on two big collecting runs so far. The first was collecting all the Star Wars vintage action figures made from 1978 to 1985, from 0 figures to the entire collection. And then the vintage Star Wars playsets made from 1978 to 1985, all the way from start to finish. And now it's time to go on my third run, the vintage vehicles. Again, made from 1978 to 1985, all of them, from 0 to a full collection. And just like my past runs, in this video, we're gonna set up the rules, we're gonna set up what I think is an essential list for a complete vintage vehicle set, and this one just may be the biggest. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm both excited and sick to the pit of my stomach. And you would think after me doing 2 complete runs that I'd get the hang of it by now. It has made me more confident and knowledgeable, but what I've learned is that each run is a completely different animal. So when I did the action figure run, what did I learn? Well, I learned about the figures themselves, of course the history, what they all come with, and how to collect them by knowing what condition that they originally came in, and then knowing what they are going for in the current market, finding reference sites and books for me to use that made it a lot easier to toy hunt with confidence. And then when I did the playset run, it was a completely different animal. I not only learned about the history of them, but what they came with originally and what one in perfect condition is supposed to look like, and what the market price trends are by researching how much they're selling for on Facebook, toy shows, eBay, and vintage toy shops. And now, the vehicles. So what I normally do in the first video is I set up my run and I make the rules. And yes, I have to have rules. And I've learned that to set up rules actually makes the collecting a lot better. You'll see why. First off, the vehicles have to be made in between 1978 and 1985. They have to be authentic and original, and no reproduction items ever. Modern reproductions or reproductions that were made back then just because they were available. All authentic. They have to be complete and not missing any items off of them, and I'm going to include stickers in this. They have to include items like paperwork, inserts I might let slide, but for right now, I want to collect all the cardboard inserts. They have to have the correct mini catalogs inside them, and if I can get the contents in unused condition, that's gonna be great. Meaning things like unused sticker sheets or the parts still in their sealed baggies. I really enjoy collecting like that. And I'm a preservationist, so I like the fact that sometimes I get to see how these came if you opened them in the late 70s or early 80s. That's just me, it's just fun for me. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. If you wanna spend $1,000 on one of these toys, rip it open and put it together, that's your money. I would faint. But like I said, I find enjoyment in that. And if you go back and watch my playset run, the ones where I had the most enjoyment were the ones where they came with unused content. So hopefully we can do that here in the vehicle run. And all of the items that I'm looking for, they have to come in a great looking box. I'm not doing a loose collection on this one. And the box has to be in decent shape, meaning that it's not missing flaps or the proof of purchases. It has to have good structural integrity, meaning that it can stand on its own and it hasn't been damaged by mold or water warping. And the box art has to be clean and the box has to come unripped. Basically just a great box. Harder to find in that condition, but that's what I want to include in my collection. And honestly, it makes the hunt funner to try to find items in as pristine condition as you can. And finally, I don't have to get all the variants. And most of the variants come in box and country of origin. So let's take the 1978 Landspeeder for example. It comes in 4 different boxes that were made from 1978 to 1984, and the US release toy is different than the UK release toy. On the US version, the hood came up, and on the UK version, it was molded as a solid body and the hood does not come up. So I'll only be buying one of those versions, and not multiple in order for my collection to be considered complete. I may buy a US version or I may buy another country of origin, but I'm only gonna get one. It just depends on what I find on a hunt and what I can get. And I'm not made of money and I'm on a budget. But if I were a billionaire, I would just go ahead and buy all of these vehicles in one day and call it done. Here they are, episode over. Good night, everybody. I wish. So next, I'm gonna build my checklist. And I'm using Apple Keynote to make my list, but you can use whatever program you want. Google Slides is also good, and it's free if you have a Google account, which I'm assuming all of you do because you're watching me here on YouTube, and Google owns YouTube. And I also gave a tutorial on how to build your own sheet, and I'll link that video down there in the description. And you can always buy a template from me, and I'll also link that down in the description. It's pre-built for vintage Star Wars, and that includes all of the action figures, play sets, vehicles, and more. Again, I'll leave a link for that down there in my description. So the feedback that I've gotten is that before I do a run, you like it when I go through and list what I think is a complete and essential list for any of the runs that I'm doing. And using the research sites and books that I've used, I've narrowed it down to what I think is an essential collection for the vehicles. So let's go through that in order by release date. So anything that you don't see on this list will most likely go on the mini rigs and the body rigs. Just wanted to clarify that before I get a slew of comments. So for this run, there are 26 vehicles on my list. I think I'm gonna throw up. The playset list was only 16, but look on the bright side. I had to collect 109 figures for my loose action figure run. So what's 26 vehicles, right? Right? So let's start in 1978 with what I feel is the most classic Star Wars vehicle of all time, the X-Wing fighter. And I had the honor of interviewing the actual designer of this toy, Jim Swearingen. And that was a treat because I got to know his thought process and debunking a lot of the myths that surrounded the line, like the myth about the president of Kenner, Bernie Loomis, making a hand gesture like this when asked how big the Star Wars action figures should be. So here's the truth. Jim Swearingen made the decision that the action figures should be 3.75 inches because that would be the ideal size for them to fit into vehicles and playsets. That would be a good size to engineer and for kids to handle. Plus a size that was realistic to distribute and have on toy shelves. And I'm glad that myth is getting debunked because Jim Swearingen was a great toy designer. So back to the list. So first is the X-Wing, made in 1978. Then again in 1978, the classic TIE Fighter, the one with the white body mold. And one that we went over earlier as an example, the 1978 Landspeeder. And this next one is not only hard to find in good shape with a box, but it's hard to find in good working shape, and it's expensive on its own or in a complete box. It's the 1978 Sonic-controlled Landspeeder, and I can already tell you that this one will be hard to find in the condition that I want to find it in. Then one that I'm excited for is the Millennium Falcon, made in 1979. I do have a loose one that I bought for a charity auction, and that was about 3 years ago, but some of the stickers are reproduction, and I bought it that way. It was for charity, and it went for a great cause, so I'm glad I bought it. Then in 1979, it's the Darth Vader TIE Fighter, and another one that is almost impossible to find in working order, and that comes with all the inserts, etc. It's the radio-controlled Sandcrawler, and this one may be the hardest item to find on this collecting journey. We'll have to see. Then in 1979, it's the Imperial Troop Transporter. Now we get to the Empire Strikes Back, and one of the toys that I'm really excited to get, the Rebel Armored Snowspeeder from 1980. And we all know how hard that tow cable is to find if you have one, but I've always wanted it as a kid, and I'm super excited to start going on the hunts for those. And from 1980, it's the Twin Pod Cloud Car. And from 1981, another one that I'm extremely excited for. I've never had this one, but it's a classic and a must-have toy. It's the AT-AT or AT-AT, whatever you want to call it. I use both. I don't care. But I want this one in working order with all the inserts. I'm hoping to get it with unused content. Hard, but I'm gonna try. And I had this next one when I was a kid, but I have no idea what happened to it. Slave 1 from 1981. And this is one that I'm looking forward to hunting for, and I hope that I can find it in unused content just so I can relive the moment of me sitting down in 1981 or 1982, whenever I got this, and opening it up in my grandma's living room. Can't wait to relive that moment. That's gonna be special. This next one is no idea that it existed until I was doing research on this run. It's the Imperial Cruiser from 1981. I would always get this confused with the Imperial Troop Transporter. But no, completely different vehicle. See, I'm still a Padawan. Anyways, that's on my list now. Then I could arguably leave this next one off my list and let me know what you would do. It's the battle-damaged X-Wing fighter from 1982. And this is the one that I had as a kid. I believe this was the first vehicle that I got, but I had this one. It's the same as the 1978 version, but now it just adds stickers that simulate battle damage. It's on my list for now, but I may take it off if I need to just save money. So I'll keep it as essential for now. But if you leave it off of yours, or just get this one instead of the 1978 one, I think it's fair to still it be considered a complete collection. So this one I just may mark off as non-essential. Another one that I had as a kid and a favorite of mine, my mom called it the chicken toy. You know what it is. It's the Scout Walker from 1982. Then it's the Rebel Transport from 1982 that can also be considered a carrying case. What say you? But it's on my essential vehicles list. So now we get into the Return of the Jedi vehicles and ships, and another battle damaged sticker one, the battle damaged TIE Fighter from 1983. And the difference is that this one is molded in blue plastic instead of the light gray version that the 1978 one was casted in. So I'll leave this one as essential because it's different enough. Still the same, almost, different enough. Another one I'm excited for is the Y-Wing made in 1983. Just a lovely, lovely design toy. And one that I already have, but I'll do a video about it and I'll show how I got it. It's the speeder bike from 1983. It's probably the smallest of the vehicles, but in my opinion, it is the best engineered and designed toys inside this entire run. You can't beat it. And one of the most beautiful looking ships of all time, the TIE Interceptor from 1984. I think it's the most underrated toy in all of the vintage line. Then another great engineered toy, and I can't wait to do a video on this one. It's the B-Wing Fighter from 1984. And another one that is hell of expensive, hard to find with unused contents and a great box. I mean, not hard. Just hard if you're trying to find one in good condition for a low price. It's the Imperial Shuttle from 1984. Again, one of the most beautiful toys to come out of the entire vintage line. And now we get into the Power of the Force toys. And all of the Power of the Force toys are pricey and hard to find, just because not a lot of them were made. They were only distributed for a year and a half before Kenner shut the entire line down in 1986. And the 1985 Tatooine Skiff defines this, both in scarcity and price. But I need to be prepared to spend high dollar amounts if I want to get a version in pretty much unused content. That's just how it is these days, unless I get lucky and I find one hiding in a garage sale somewhere. Next is the 1985 Ewok Battle Wagon. And there are always toys on my runs that are my least favorite that I'm looking forward to collecting. The Ewok Battle Wagon may be in that category for this run. We'll have to see. But I've also said that about toys from my playset run, like Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. I was not looking forward to that one, but it ended up being one of my favorites. I still think it's an ugly toy though. Now we get into one that came out in the Droids cartoon line, the 1985 A-Wing, another hard-to-find toy, either loose or in a box. And another one from the Droids cartoon, the 1985 Side Gunner. And the last vehicle on this list, the 1985 ATL Interceptor, which some have on their mini rig list. I have it on my essential main vehicles list. So that's my list, and this is the sheet that I'm going to be using to keep track of my entire journey. I'm going to use it to keep track of seller's info, tracking data, and any notes that I may need to make to myself in order to keep me organized and focused on this run. Because most of my runs are lasting me 2 years, and sometimes I buy from multiple people at the same time. It's just hard to keep track with all that data. So on this spreadsheet it goes, I look at it once, and I'm in the know. And plus, after each episode, I get to check one off the list, and that is super satisfying. And inside this box are my first 3 vehicles that I've hunted on this run. So find out what vehicle is inside the box and one that I'm gonna start with. And I promise you, I'm starting out with a bang. Which one do you think it is? And let me know what vehicles that you would include or exclude from this list. And I'm glad that you're here for the start of these journeys, because I learned a lot on each of these runs, and I know that you've told me that you've learned a lot by coming along on this journey with me. I'm not going alone. I'm glad you're here, because you guys give me some amazing advice. And if you want to join one of my communities, my Patreon group is perfect to join. And if you don't want to join the Patreon group, please join me here on YouTube, where you can support me making these videos. And becoming a member really helps, whether on Patreon or here on YouTube, because it allows me to devote more time, effort, and a lot of resources that I need to put these videos together. So if you're a member, I thank you. And if you want to join, the links are down there in the description. And to see the next video, click the links on your screen now. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.